What's up, everyone? Welcome back. It's the Pick Swap Podcast. We're ringing in the new year here. Well, your last one, the last one you did with David, was that on New Year's Eve?
It was, yeah. So right before. So this is
So, all
first one of
right,
2022.
there you go. So we're starting off the new year. Sixers are on a little bit of a roll, 3-0, 3-0 streak recently. They got back in action tonight against the Rockets, who will be without Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr. after a strange weekend for them. Both of them being Kevin Porter Jr. leaving the arena at halftime of their last game, and Christian Wood missing a COVID test, which ended up getting them both suspended for tonight's matchup. So Sean's with me, obviously. How are you feeling about the Sixers over the last week, and looking forward to tonight as well?
Yeah, good. Unlike Kevin Porter Jr., unlike Antonio Brown, I will not be leaving the podcast midway through and throwing a tantrum. And there seems to be a lot of that going around right now, a lot of madness in the world. So on the bright side, I guess Sixers are catching a pretty lucky streak of games, a nice little look of schedule going up, a lot of winnable games, and really a chance to advance the record, climb the schedule, get everybody healthy. So I do think things are up and up on the Sixers world right now.
Yeah, it feels a little bit weird. It has not as rocky recently,
hmm
but with a little bit of the break in the action here, and they have the Rockets tonight, which should be, they're 13.5 point favorites right now. It should be a win going into tonight. And then they have, do you know what is it, the Magic
Yeah,
this week?
Magic, Spurs,
Yeah. So
they
it's
played yeah.
Houston,
I'll pull up the
Orlando,
schedule.
San Antonio is
I
the
believe
next
so.
three. So like you have
Mhm.
a chance here to play some lower tier teams, lower level teams, not as skilled and talented as you. And the Sixers are starting to get back fully healthy. Danny Green kind of mentioned that he was going to be back for today's game. So it looks like they're getting back to full strength again, or at least as close as possible. And they're playing teams that aren't as good and as talented as them. Doc Rivers is still out with COVID
Mhm.
though. If so, Dan Burke is still going to be stepping in. So just a little bit of housekeeping there. But we're going to talk about today, Sean. If you want to introduce it, a couple of different tiers of players that we have for what we would accept for Ben Simmons trades.
Yeah, so I guess we've kind of, for the most part, just purely talked Sixers this year and kind of avoided the Ben Simmons issue. But as the trade deadline gets closer, I do think it's an important conversation to have and on like the outlook of this team. So there's been so much talk on kind of like the list that Daryl Morey has and the list of guys, the top 25 or the top 30 players or whatever it is. So I kind of wanted to dive in on guys that we would realistically trade for Ben Simmons. So I've kind of broke it down into three categories. One I have is would love but unlikely. The others would do the trade, and the others kind of need a little more. So kind of a starting point for a trade, but would hope for some more assets in exchange. So to start off, I have 29 guys on my list. James, how many do
Total
you have total behind, but between the three categories?
9. So
Nine.
mine's
All right.
much shorter. I tried to be like as realistic as possible on all the levels. I'm very excited to hear the guys that you have on the list because I would like to see where we sit on those.
Gotcha. All right, so let's dive right in. I don't think we're gonna have much arguments here, but the would love but unlikely. Who do you have on yours?
So I have Dame,
hmm
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and I have Jaylen Brown on here, but I also have him on my second tier because I think that there's a chance. But I
hmm
think in terms of best fits, best out there available, the most sought after in my idea from what the Sixers need, Jaylen
Yeah.
Brown is on that top list.
Yeah, absolutely no arguments there. I think in my mind right now, Jaylen Brown is the ideal piece if he is a guy that shakes loose. I don't think it's very likely. I think the Celtics are gonna at least keep it together for this year. But I really do think from a roster construction aspect, I would like the Sixers to attack and get a wing here. I think that is the biggest hole in this team. If they can get a legitimate wing that can score and defend, I think that catapults them back in the contender. So Jaylen Brown is the ideal for me. I also have guys I have in this category: Bradley Beal, James Harden, Luka Doncic, I think is pretty off the table, but I would love it. Uh, Donovan Mitchell, Zach LaVine, and John Morant. So I'm sure no arguments there. These are not any guys that I feel realistically, but all kind of like a pipe dream that would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh, the
totally agree there.
yeah, the Bradley Beal and Dame Lillard, those ones are so weird to me because I really feel like they should be more in the conversation for Vail. Like Dame Lillard specifically, it doesn't make any sense to me from Portland's standpoint why they won't even consider moving on from this guy. Like they're gonna be in a full fledged rebuild very soon. That it seems just they're just not really acknowledging that that is the case. And Dame and Bradley Beal both seem very content on just being the best player on a bad team. So I don't really understand that dynamic, but I do think like from all accounts, it seems like no trade is there. So frustrating, but it is what it is.
I feel like Brad Beal might shake loose after this year. I feel like this might be his last year. For like we've seen a lot of things, and he said he's not comfortable signing that extension yet. Um, that team is really like people acted like they were going to be good for like a minute when they had a good first like 10 games of the year. People were like, oh, the
Yeah.
Wizards. They're still the Wizards. They don't have a superstar aside from Brad Beal. They haven't been healthy a lot, and they just don't. They're not a good team. They're not a good enough team to compete. I wonder how much longer Brad Beal can take that. And you wonder if there's a 3-team deal looming with the St. Louis connection between Brad Beal and Jason Tatum. I wonder if the Celtics are trying to do that. Could you see potentially? This is kind of an offbeat question, but could you see a 3-team trade: Sixers, Wizards, Celtics, where Simmons ends up in Washington,
Yeah, I
the
mean,
Celtics end up with Beal, and the Sixers end up with Jaylen Brown?
yeah, I if it's a possibility, I'd be all about
Yeah,
it. I don't understand Bradley Beal like at all. Like
me either.
even in that 10 game where they started out super hot, that looked like the most miserable he had been in his entire time there. Like I don't really understand how that guy ticks. He can obviously score the hell out of the basketball, so I would still
Yeah,
take him in a heartbeat, but he does seem kind of a weird cat to me. But and real quick before we dive into this next category, I do genuinely believe that any deal that does end up getting done is going to be a multi-team deal, that there's a lot of moving parts and guys going different directions. So a lot of these players I don't think are obviously 1-for-1 deals for Simmons, and that
yeah.
even for the opposing team, it doesn't make sense to swap them for Simmons. But I do think like they should be targets for the Sixers in kind of the string of in the end going to them. So I do think it's gonna be complicated. I didn't think it makes sense for their team. I think the team's involved. Mhm.
Yeah.
So to dive
So
into
you
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
you get so to dive into the next category of would do it. Who do you have on your list, James?
So I have Jaylen Brown here as well. I have
Uh huh.
DeJounte Murray here, and I have
Okay.
Bradley Beal here.
Okay. All right.
So that's like my very condensed list, and I'm like I was literally like where I'm thinking when I'm looking at these guys as the best possible outcomes for the current situation, and that has like a realistic trade side to it. So like Jaylen Brown, I think is the best case scenario right now. There's a realistic chance that it gets done considering the way the two of these teams are playing, the Celtics and the Sixers.
Mhm.
DeJounte Murray, I'm a big fan of, and then Brad Beal, like we just talked about, it's a chance that he could shake loose this summer. So I kept it pretty condensed, but I'm ready to hear yours.
Okay. First off, I have DeJounte Murray in my need a little more category. I'm
Okay.
not huge on Murray. I think he has a little bit of the like best player on a bad team kind of thing. Like he reminds me in this. Obviously, he's better than this guy, but he gives me some Michael Carter Williams vibes with just kind of like the way the tall guard on a not a great team, and he can defend. He's a pretty good defender. The numbers look very good, but it's just when I watch him, I'm not as bought in. Like there's guys on the Spurs when I look at like even Derek White next to him, like he is a guy I look at like he can contribute on a winning team. I feel like, and I don't always get that like same vibe with Murray.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I think I would, like you said, it wouldn't be a 1-for-1. I think this would probably be like a mix of guys in and out, centered around DeJounte Murray, which I love. But if it's like Murray, Doug McDermott, and one of the maybe even Keldon Johnson, if you can swing that in some way, I'm a big Keldon
Yeah,
Johnson fan as well. I think when you think about this young core of players that the Sixers have, DeJounte Murray in terms of like mindset and ability is kind of filling in and would be a great backcourt partner with Tyrese.
yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with that. He's a guy like I'm not against, but I would need a little more. Like I'm not
Yeah.
fully bought in on that. All right. So to dive through, we'll just go 1-for-1. Give me your thoughts a little bit on each. Kyrie Irving.
Oof. Oh, that's such a tough one because like skill wise, obviously, like
Mhm. It's a lot of
if
weirdness that
Kyrie's
comes with him.
there's too much unpredictability. And I think that I think it's tough because you want the security when Ben is gone because there's been so much bullshit with Ben.
Hmm.
That you probably don't want to just swap shit for shit. You probably want to move on from that. But in terms of like what Kyrie is as a player, absolutely. But I don't know that you do that deal considering, the current situation.
Yeah, I would be all about it just based on it. Like that'd be by far the best perimeter guard Embiid's already ever played
Yeah.
with, and he's capable of being a 2A guy on a team that like paired with Embiid, I think could bring a championship. And as much shit as I've talked on Kyrie in the past, and as much like
Yeah.
I don't particularly like the guy, I would forgive him in a second if he became a Sixer. Uh,
Always.
I'll package kind of these two together, but both I don't think are particularly likely, but would absolutely do. Kawhi and Paul George.
Yeah, wow. I doubt either of them are trying to leave, but man, you're talking about defensive replacement, absolutely there with both of them. And then scoring potential. I do not think that either of them want to come play for Doc Rivers though, which
For
is
sure.
fair enough to say
Yeah.
the least.
All right. Jamal Murray.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, Jamal Murray is very, very good and would
Yeah.
play perfectly next to Embiid.
Yeah. Agreed. Klay Thompson.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
I think so. He's coming back this weekend.
Yeah. It looks like Friday against the Cavs. I'm excited for that. Not official
Yeah.
yet, but that's what it's looking like. Brandon Ingram.
No,
No.
I'm not a
Really?
Brandon Ingram fan at all. No.
Okay. Why is that?
It just like kind of like what similar to what you said earlier about a good player on a bad team.
Hmm.
He is like as empty gets with stats. He's a like a good offensive player. Um but like there's just nothing to him. Like and maybe this is something that may more of an assumption. I can't tell you how many Pelicans games I watch, but I've never been impressed with him. His drive, his motor just doesn't seem very much there. And he seems like a very meh player, and to pair him with Tobias would be like the ugliest 40 points combined every night, just like so quiet and ugly. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to an extent. I think like he's a lot of what Ben Simmons isn't, which to be honest, is what the Sixers should be looking for at this point. Like, I mean, he's big enough, long enough to be kind of the wing that they need. He can shoot. He's a guy. I'm looking for a high usage offensive wing with this to an extent. Like, and that is what Ingram is. Like, he does produce the numbers that like, and I mean the points on a bad team is a fair argument, but I just think that there's like fit wise is way more complimentary. I don't think there's too much like that's a pretty realistic kind of trade off for me. And I do think it's funny that it's the throwback to the draft when it was the 1 and 2 Simmons and Brandon Ingram. But I think it is a deal that makes a lot of sense. I have seen like improvement in his game since like he came in the league, and I still have a little faith in Ingram. I liked him coming out of the draft. I liked him in college, and I still think there's more there that he hasn't quite shown yet. And he's still been pretty good. One-time
That,
All-Star, still got more in the tank.
that's fair.
Mhm.
I've never been a huge Brandon Ingram fan, but that's some bias on my part.
Yeah. Mikhail Bridges.
Oof. That one hurts. I don't even know if I want to talk about that because that hurts just so bad to think you had to trade for him. I don't know, man. No, I don't think so. Like in just in terms of like what you're like really what you're looking for, Bridges is like peak role player. Um, I don't know that he's a franchise altering player, which is what the Sixers are trying to trade for. And when you look at a guy like Jaylen Brown, that's a franchise altering player, whereas I don't think Bridges is. But I do like Bridges like a ton, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of sting in this one when we think about the past. I will say, I think there's way too much made out of the missed opportunity on Bridges when it comes to like Sixers social media and Sixers Twitter, just talking about it. Like
Yeah.
realistically, if he had not been traded for Zaire Smith, who prayers up, I still like feel bad about the Zaire Smith situation. If
Yeah.
he didn't have the allergy, I do genuinely believe like he could have been a serviceable NBA player. But if he was not traded in that, like I think he absolutely would have been thrown in the Jimmy deal or the Toby deal. Like I don't think he would have been a guy the Sixers ever kind of built around. Now looking at it for right now, I think he would cover up a ton of what the Sixers are missing right now. Like I think he'd be a great fit for cover up a lot of what Simmons does with a little more, I feel like. And obviously not with the passing and the distributing. And there still would be needs on this team. Like pretty much regardless of what this trade is, I think there has to be an additional Tobias Harris trade. And I
Yeah.
mean, I've gotten to that point in my beliefs, but I think like defensively, Bridges can be the guy that guards who you're looking for. He can be like the Sixers just lack so much athleticism that he would inject. And as much as he is kind of like a role player, he is like a star as a role player. And I don't know. I doubt Phoenix is interested in touching him, but I think that's like an interesting swap that like Simmons could be effective in that kind of play style as well. So I would be into a Bridges swap.
Yeah. I mean, I would love Bridges here, obviously, but he just signed that extension, so it's
Yeah.
probably too far gone now.
Yeah. I think it's an unlikely one, but I'd be all about it. Next up, Anthony Edwards.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah, I
yeah.
love him. He's a
Oh
guy I would
yeah.
love everything about if he was here too. Like he's one of the funniest guys in the world, one of the coolest dudes in the NBA, and he can ball. Like he can score.
Yeah. No, he's a real hooper, and I think in a system like this where he does have like, he has the responsibilities of being the perimeter scorer, but like with Embiid, and obviously Cat is there, but I don't think like Cat demands the ball and the touches and the defensive awareness of uh that the defense has to put on Embiid when he's playing in the post. I think opens up a lot more for Edwards um in Philadelphia if he were here. Obviously, I mean, they would be morons to move him,
Hmm.
even for Ben, who I think is obviously a great player, but I think he's the future for them and the league. So I wouldn't move on, but I would love him here.
Wow, that was high praise of in the league there. But
Yeah.
I'll take it. This guy, this is another dream for me. Darius Garland. I absolutely
Oh
love Darius
yeah.
Garland.
He should be an all-star this year. He's been really, really good.
Yeah,
I wonder, I mean, they're gonna move on from one of those two though, right? And I mean, I'm sure it's Sexton now, but
yeah. The Sexton torn ACL also complicates this. Uh, and honestly, if there was some sort of like flop, like if we're looking at making this a bigger deal, I really do believe the Cavs are going to be to some extent involved in this Simmons trade, whether it's like picking up scraps or whatever it is. I think they're going to be in the trade. But if
yeah.
it is kind of like a Garland and Kevin Love for like Simmons and Toby, and obviously way more pieces involved too, but like that's a core that I'm interested in, and just like a Kevin Love has been good. It hasn't really been talked about. Like he has been producing for the Cavs, and it feels like everyone forgets he's even in the league anymore. And
Yeah.
that's a much better fitting like big man partner next to Embiid, and he also is way better on the boards than Tobias Harris is. So that's something I would be interested in.
Yeah, yeah, and I forget who it was. It might have been Windhorst. Mentioned that if he knows Dan Gilbert at all, he knows that he'll try to make a pass for Ben this summer. Which, like, the Cavs are good right now. They're playing
Yeah.
really well. It would have to be Garland in my opinion, and then whatever else comes with it.
Hmm.
I don't want like I like Sexton, but that would be more of like a secondary move rather than like a one for one or the centerpiece of a move with the Cavs. But yeah, I'm sure you can see what you can do with them, and if you get a handful of good players, like of that tier, might be worth it.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that really gets me out on Sexton is the timeline for me has moved up to this year. Like I want a trade to happen before the deadline because of like I'm just not willing to sacrifice another year of Embiid's prime.
Yeah,
If a trade doesn't happen, that's exactly what we're doing. And Sexton's got the torn ACL; he's not coming back. Like it's the same premise. Like there's no point in moving on from Ben for a guy that can't play, in my opinion. So I
yeah,
guess that's what changes it for me. All right,
agreed.
to dive into the next category, the need a little more. So kind of as starting pieces for a deal. Who you got?
I have Fox, Darren Fox, and CJ McCollum are
Okay.
my two players in this.
Gotcha. Both on my list. Fox is a little lower, I would say. First off, the CJ McCollum, it makes perfect sense for me, like a CJ McCollum for Tobias Harris swap. And the
Yeah,
Trailblazers don't seem willing to at all. That's like the same tier of player in my mind. And from Portland's perspective, like they're not benefiting off CJ just being a worse Dame when he's not there and running the offense and being that guy. Like that, it just simply hasn't been effective enough to get to the point where they want. Toby would be like a nice kind of counter to Dame in the fact that like he can now do his thing and play in the post, score in the mid
yeah.
range. And I don't, I don't understand. And obviously, like it's not as simple as a one for one, but that's something like I feel like they should be interested, and then they're just not.
Yeah, I mean, I would love them for them to be interested. I think CJ has like maybe a step or so in terms of like the better player with Tobias,
Hmm.
just like more skilled.
Yeah,
I think more of what like the modern NBA values a little
for
bit,
sure.
and that could be where that falls, like that um misinterpretation falls. But yeah, man, that I mean the Blazers are going nowhere and really,
Right.
really fast. And like they don't have much else to work with. Like they don't have any players that are like Simons is the only player on that roster that's like people are kind of like excited about. Everyone else is what they are. Obviously, Dame is Dame, and like CJ's even just he McCollum is McCollum. He's gonna be what he is, and I'm sure there's interest in him around the league. But then aside from that, like you have two major pieces, and then one like minor valuable backup piece.
Yeah.
Like they don't have a lot of value on that roster as is. I'm sure they don't have a ton of capital because it's all wrapped up in Dame and CJ.
Hmm.
Like, what else do you do if you're the Blazers? It seems like there's got to be some sort of sail. And maybe that's why the Sixers are waiting till the summer. That 2 more years of Tobias is, I think, a little bit more reasonable for some teams than 3 more or 2.5.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And then as far as the De'Aaron Fox, I I'm torn on Fox. There's a part of me
Yeah,
that just I mean, the shooting concerns are very, like, legitimate. Like, he's
real.
been he pretty much is I guess what holds me back the most on Fox is I think Tyrese Maxey's already, like, 90% of De'Aaron Fox, and I think Maxey is going to be so much better in the long run.
Yeah.
But there is a part of me that thinks, like, a Maxey and Fox backcourt, like, that kind of thunder and lightning with Embiid in the post and those 2 up top, like, that can give teams some trouble. So, I guess with that and a little more, and you'd absolutely need to get, like, some sort of sizable wing in this deal, but, I guess I can buy into that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple things with the Kings, and there's a couple interesting ways to go about this. To talk about Tobias for a second, like Tobias for Harrison Barnes is I've seen a lot of, and like
Yeah,
if you're the Sixers, you got like I think you'd think about that, right?
I
Um,
absolutely would.
he's having Harrison Barnes is having a very good year. He does he plays the same position but much differently than Tobias Harris. So I think that there should be conversations with the Kings. I don't know if Fox is involved. It seems like he's probably on his way out at some point before the deadline or at the end of the year. So definitely something to keep a flyer on, I would say, to just kind of keep tabs on where he's at and where the Kings are at in terms of moving whoever's on their roster. And I think there's some value there to be had in positions the Sixers need. So I don't know though. I mean, Fox would be definitely an interesting fit here.
Yeah, it's interesting to me when you compare Harrison Barnes and Tobias because statistically they're pretty similar, like points per game, rebound, even 3-point attempts, which I was very surprised that they're pretty much
Wow.
equal in that. But like Barnes just has the feel of so much better of a player, which it
Yeah.
doesn't really make sense. But when you watch it, I know Buddy Hield's been thrown around for so long,
Yeah, of
but
course.
a guy that something I could see working is a Sabonis for in the Simmons kind of trade, and then get back Buddy for Tobias. Like if you get like a legitimate 4, and then I would just it would be so refreshing to have a guy like Buddy Hield that just is willing to shoot
Chucks.
it whenever, whatever. Like that would be
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, I've liked Buddy for a while. I've liked him since college, since the Oklahoma days. And I mean, there's certainly the bad that comes with the good a little bit with him, but like it would be a refreshing bad for the Sixers. So I would take that.
Yeah. And like I don't think he's had this structure. Like I think you got to give Kings, like players that play on the Kings, a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Just
Mhm.
like especially younger guys now, like he hasn't had any sort of guidance. What they've had so many coaches, like
Yeah.
every one of them has been bad, and like he's just been all over the place. And it seems like he gets a poor character review. But I think that's just I can't obviously you can't speak on it, but that seems a little bit of a reach. I think he's pretty quiet for the most part, and he like everything coming up into the NBA was like, oh, but he's just a great guy. He's like, he came from nothing, like really nothing,
Yeah.
and he came all the way to this point, and he was just like a really high character kid coming out of Oklahoma, and then he spent 3 years in Sacramento, and people like now they're like, oh, he doesn't care. He's just whatever. He only cares about whatever. It's like, yeah, because he plays basketball in Sacramento for Luke Walton the last 2 seasons. Like, of course he doesn't care. But like, I think there's like I said, there's a lot of value on that roster. I think that it's gonna be poached at some point.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I definitely think the Lakers made a mistake trading for Russ over Buddy Hield, which is
Yeah.
crazy to say in a vacuum, but is absolutely true.
Yeah.
To jump to, we kind of touched on him, but what are your thoughts on Sabonis?
No. I
Really?
like like a very immediate no for me. Here it just doesn't make sense.
Mhm. It
It,
absolutely doesn't with Tobias. To like, I don't see it.
even without Tobias, bro, all the things that we don't like about Tobias, like Sabonis is worse at like most of those things. Like
That I disagree with because A, he's a much better rebounder, which is a serious issue on the Sixers team. And B, like he's used to playing next to another like legitimate big with Turner. And Turner obviously shot more perimeter than Sabonis, so there would be some sort of kind of concerns there. But I think like I think he's okay with being kind of a backseat guy while still contributing. And I mean, he's like a very good rebounder, which is very appealing to me.
he's only like this year he's making 30% of 2.5 attempts from 3. Like which, like, we hate Tobias for not stretching the floor, and, like, he would just do, like, a worse job. Obviously not with Tobias here, like, definitely no with Tobias being here, but, like, I think if the objective is to make this team and this roster and this lineup, like, more conducive with what Joel Embiid does. I think Sabonis is like a really strong step in the wrong direction,
Yeah,
personally.
that's fair. What was his percentage again?
30%,
All right.
30.3% this year.
So Toby's 29.6 on more
That's
attempts against him.
terrible.
Yeah.
That's
Uh,
terrible.
yeah, really
That
bad.
I think that makes me, like, dislike Harris more right then
Yeah,
than I d
yeah.
even Sabonis. I mean, Tobias is not a good fit
No,
next to Embiid, like, if
100%.
we're being honest.
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
100%.
They're both bad. Maybe it's a bad swap for both sides. I don't know.
All right, to move on to the next one, Jeremy Grant.
I like Jeremy Grant. I think he also would have to be here, like, there'd have to be a Tobias move.
Yeah. I
Um
yeah, for sure.
But I like Jeremy Grant, and whatever he like, if he was able to come back here in any, I think in any sense with a Tobias, or I don't know, man, it's gonna take a lot of things. Maybe it's a 5-team trade with Simmons, and he's one of those pieces that ends up back here. Like, I would be cool with that. Obviously, not like the guy you're looking for in a Simmons trade,
Mhm.
but if he ends up here and whatever strand of moves happens, I'm very cool with that.
Yeah, another guy that it kinda hurts a little bit because he is a process Sixer and a guy
Yeah.
that kinda not that we gave up on, but somebody that's kind of definitely ascended to a level that the Sixers didn't
Was
expect.
he? Was he? Who did he get traded for? Am I completely tripping when I think it was Marco Bellinelli?
Um, I think you are.
I'm like weirdly confident that he got traded from Marco Bellinelli. I could be completely wrong, which
I
tell
believe
me if
he was
I
a
am.
I believe he was a part of the Tobias trade, but I'm gonna check right now.
He was
Um,
gone before that.
you're right. You are right. It was for, no, it was for the Ersan Ilyasova trade,
Ah,
which so we got
okay.
6 months
Same
of
year.
Ersan Ilyasova, who I absolutely love for the record,
Yeah.
and he was
Ersan.
terrific here. But for 6 months, for a guy that's now become a very good NBA player, is a
Yeah.
little upsetting.
Where
Uh,
so Jeremy Grant went where first? Denver
the Thunder.
or Thunder? And then
Hmm.
Denver and then Detroit. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. So cool,
Interesting.
cool, cool to see him develop though. Very cool.
Yeah.
Um, Reggie Jackson.
Oh, I like Reggie. He's a good point guard, and we talked about him over the summer,
Yeah,
a lot, and I was very into him as an addition to this team. So, if he finds his way again, what's the Clippers' record? Do
pretty
you
good.
know?
They're pretty close to the top
I
of
was
the
gonna say they're
West.
what, top 4 seed in the West right now.
Yeah.
So I doubt that they're probably not trying to make any moves right now. And like if you think about it, Ben or Tobias, neither of them fit with that team like at all.
Hmm.
So really unlikely that happens, but Reggie Jackson would be great here.
Yeah, they're not as good as I thought. They're 19 and 18, sixth in the West. I do think it
Okay.
makes a lot of sense. Like, obviously, Kawhi is still coming back from injury. But if you want to pair like those three, like a big three, a quote unquote big three of like Kawhi, Paul George, and Ben, you're sending them out to LA. I do think I could see something being built around that. And I absolutely love Reggie Jackson. Like, I he's
Big
a guy
Reggie
that
fan.
I'm thrilled by when I watch play, and I do think he can be like that guy. Like, he's a guy willing to take the big shots, especially I mean, he did it in the playoffs. He's done it a lot now. So it's like I think there's something there with him. I could see the Clippers not having any interest at all, but I love Reggie Jackson.
Do you know how gut wrenching it would be to watch Ben go play for Tyronn Lue and then like play really well because Tyronn Lue would get him to play really well, and then like two players that just did not get along with Doc, with Ben
Yeah.
and Paul George, it would just be bad. But Reggie Jackson, I'm a fan of. I think that had to be. I mean, I would love for it to be part of like a Harris move, but
Yeah. Yeah. I can't see them wanting Toby
no,
back with that
I don't
squad,
think
but
any dude. The thing is, I don't think anyone actually does.
right. Well, here's what I can say about Toby is I can totally see him being like the best player on a bad team where everybody kind of wonders like, is he good or like are those 20
Yeah,
points a game like legit? Like really?
yeah,
And but like as far as teams looking like we're missing a piece on our team, we need Tobias Harris. I don't think there's any of those.
very fair.
Jaron Jackson.
I don't. No, I mean not here. I think like talent wise, he's very good.
He's
He's
awesome.
a really good player. Um, Again, I just don't think. I mean, first of all, it seems like super unlikely that they have a great core down there in Memphis, and then
Definitely.
him and Ja play great together. But yeah, I don't think that's happening, and I don't know how the fit is next to Embiid. Although he does space the floor.
Yeah, he does. I don't think it's likely from a trade point of view, but I do really like Jaron Jackson. I think he's gonna be terrific for a lot of years coming
Yeah,
forward. OG Anunoby. I
dude,
got
I love OG.
I do too.
I'm a big OG fan. I think that there's a likelihood that there's a Raptors package. I don't know what that is, but when we talked about Ben and or when we talked about when the Sixers played Toronto like 2 weeks ago, we talked about how, they're just lengthy and they don't really have like a pure center and they're just great defenders that switch everything. Like you're talking about Ben Simmons in a nutshell right there. So if they're really interested in him being, um, that guy going forward for them, whether it's like Freddie V and OG Anunoby, like that's a great restart. If you're the Sixers, again, it would be terrifying to see Ben Simmons in a competent system where they use him in the right way. It might be crazy to see what he does there because like they're a positionless team. They're
Yeah.
an interesting squad. Like I don't know what it would be like for them, but like OG Anunoby's perfect in terms of defensively, uh, mentality wise, and then Fred VanVleet gives you everything you need from that point guard position. So that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I see a lot like that. Those are both guys on my list here. I mean, statistically, both very impressive too. OG, 19.4 points, 5.2 rebounds, 2.4 assists. He's shooting 35.4% from three on 7.1 attempts per game. And then Fred VanVleet, 20.9 points per game, 6.7 assists, 5 rebound, and 40% on 8 3-pointer attempts a game.
Yeah.
Both very impressive. Both guys I would absolutely love to build some sort of deal around. I agree completely with what you said from the Raptors aspect too. I really
Yeah.
do kind of like the system, what they're building. Scotty Barnes is totally awesome. That he's like a
Yeah.
terrific building block they have. But I would absolutely OG is kind of like the wing type player that I think they're looking for. And Fred VanVleet, I mean, he's 27 years old in the prime. He's gotten better and better. Like he's for sure a guy that kind of has like his ceiling's a lot higher than I think anyone expected it to be. And I
Yeah.
think it is like legitimate. Like he hits big shots, he plays the right way, makes good decisions, and both guys I would buy in on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and those guys again, like, well, first of all, they've been there. They went to the finals, they won a finals. They're very, very skilled, good players, and they fit what the Sixers like. The offense from both of them outweighs what Ben obviously did. And then defensively, you get so much of that from OG Anunoby. And Fred VanVleet is just one of those savvy point guards, too, that you just love to have on the floor. A guy that commands, takes control of the pace, controls everything, can shoot free throws down the stretch. Like, he's a classic point guard that you'd really like on the team. And when he shoots 40% from three next to Embiid, like, that's lovely. That sounds
Yeah.
fantastic. So, yeah, I'd be super intrigued by those guys.
Yeah. All right. I got two more. But once again, both guys that it would need a little more to get a deal done, but I would consider as starting points. Devonte Graham.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Graham seems very much like I don't know. Maybe it's just this Pelicans thing. It's just like he is, and I feel like there's a lot of guys that not a lot of guys, but a handful of guys that do what Devonte Graham does. So I'm not like he doesn't pique my interest, but he's a very good guard.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that don't like Devonte Graham, which has surprised me because he is a guy I really like enjoy watching and I think is very good. He's a guy I think that would complement Maxey well in the backcourt, which I think would be cool. And
Yeah,
I just really do like his game. I think he is like a legitimately good NBA guard and a guy that like once again I think it would be a good pairing with Maxey, a good kind of counter. He can shoot the ball, he can handle it, he can do a little bit of everything. So I think he is a useful player and would be a guy I would happily welcome as a Sixer. And
yeah.
then last one, maybe a guy that I would unwillingly welcome as a Sixer a little more, but Terry Rozier.
Oh, Scary Terry. What a
Yeah.
guy, huh? I like Scary Terry. I don't have any problems with him. Again, he's just another one of those guys I feel like that do similar things. Like he's a guy that I think I've always kind of like wanted as probably like your fourth option offensively
Mhm.
or like fifth option offensively. Uh in that starting lineup. So I don't know, man. I probably wouldn't go down that road, but again, I kind of do like Scary Terry in a weird way.
Yeah. He was like going into draft day, he was a guy I loved. And I was like, I had
Yeah.
circled on my board and then turned out to be a Celtic, was there and was good there for a little while before going
Yeah.
out of Charlotte. He's a guy that takes big shots. He's not afraid of the moment. Like and like even when you watch like the Hornets games, like fourth quarter is Terry Rozier time. And like
Yeah.
I I could certainly see them not being willing to move on from him, but I think there is going to be kind of a baton handing in the future for that Hornets team. I probably don't think they're interested in touching it now. I mean, they got a ton of talent there. Bridges, another guy I would consider a Simmons trade too, probably should be on my list. But
Yeah.
Bridges is great. LaMelo is great. Gordon Hayward, I'm sure, will probably shake loose at some point, but they do have like a good core there. But I love Rozier as far as like a guy that could step up into like the big moments. And I do really think the Sixers are missing that. So I would take him for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot of teams I think are kind of in this, like, a little bit between the win now and the push towards the future. I think the Hornets are firmly in that spot where it's like they have some players that are competing right now, but like Scary Terry, Gordon Hayward, Plumlee, like they have a couple guys on that roster that are like, why?
Hmm.
Like, why did you pay Gordon Hayward so much money? I don't
Yeah.
really know. I don't get it. Like, I don't really know why, what the point of that was, but like, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they move on from any of those guys.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, I mean, there's so many, like, once again, I think there's going to be a multi team deal. I think there's going to be a lot of moving parts. I'm pretty confident there's going to be some combination of the T Wolves, the Cavs, the Pacers, the Trailblazers, and the Kings involved in this. Like, to at a minimum, some combination of like thrown in
Yeah.
players with there is how this deal ends up getting done. It's such Simmons is such like a niche player that it's like weird. It's going to be a unique situation, and I mean, it has been the whole time. But
Yeah.
are there any other teams you think kind of are in that conversation?
I think there's a lot of teams that are sellers at the deadline. You mentioned a lot of them.
Hmm.
But then, like, you think about the Raptors. The Raptors might be buyers. They might be looking for a guy to take them to the next level. Who knows? The
Yeah.
Lakers are going to be doing a fire sale. We can only assume towards the deadline. So there's another Western Conference team that gets in. Boston is probably looking to either upgrade or set themselves up for an upgrade at some point. I heard that they're interested in moving on from Al Horford, which would just be like chef's kiss perfect for them to trade him again. It'd be amazing. But yeah, I mean this is set up to be a very active trade deadline or
Hmm.
trade season, I should say. And could even end up being I think unfortunately it looks like a lot of things might have to wait until the summer, like late June.
Yeah. Are you okay with that? I guess is my question. Like, if the trade deadline comes and goes, and the Sixers are relatively the same team as they are right now, how are you feeling?
I'll be disappointed for
Yeah.
sure. I think I'll just definitely be like, there's gonna be part of me that understands that I'm like, okay, I like then you I think my situation, I'll be more like you better be making a trade like first day available, first day possible. You can move on to do it. But to like just openly miss this full year basically and not ever give yourself a real chance. Even if if they move Tobias
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
for someone and then kind of just take this walk into the offseason and then be like, okay, we're going after this guy and this guy, and we're trading for him and we're signing this guy. Like I would feel better that way, but I think I'll definitely, if the deadline comes and goes, I'll definitely be disappointed if they don't make at least one move.
Yeah, I need to see something, and I think I've been a very Daryl Morey defender from the start, and I still am. I still do believe in the guy, and that I'm happy he's the guy in charge. But I need to see something. Like, if this trade deadline comes and goes, and the Sixers are the exact same team that they are right now, I'll be super frustrated. Like, this is once again, Joel is ready to win. Joel is at the stage in his career where he is locked in. We might never see him play this
Yeah,
caliber of basketball again, and I get so scared whenever I say that out loud. But even if it is like a Tobias for a better fitting kind of complementary piece, at least that's something in my mind. And even if the
yeah,
Simmons stuff, like, I understand you waiting to the offseason, if because I do there in the back of my mind think there is like a real shot at like a James Harden sign and trade or something along those lines.
yeah,
And like, I guess it is worth it when you think about it like that. If we go into next year with a full year of that, but I need to see at least something at the deadline.
yeah. I'm hopeful still. There's been a lot of like hot and cold moments with the NBA this season. Like right away, it was like Dame is gonna go, and then he has literally nonstop talked about how he doesn't want to leave. And
Mhm.
then like Jalen Brown and that whole thing has kind of happened where there seems to be a little bit of a rift in that locker room and who's gonna stay and who's gonna go. And there's a lot of chances, I think, to improve your team one way or another. So I think they have the opportunities. It just depends on which one they attack, really.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So it's gonna be interesting to watch as the off season gets or as the trade deadline gets closer. And I don't know. At least for the moment, the Sixers have a little bit of time to not rest because they obviously need to take care of business during these games. But it's a little break from kind of the gruel that they've been on. Some extra days off. So I'm glad for the team, a chance to get healthy, and hopefully there's some reshaping moving forward.
Yeah, and I think there will be, but until then, we'll definitely, keep up on this kind of thing. We're keeping our eyes out. Obviously, Sean has a lot of players on his list that he's ready for. Mine's a little bit shorter, but I think that they have, like I said, a ton of opportunities here. Likely they'll move on. So the Sixers play the Rockets tonight. We'll get this out and ready for you then. Sean, if you have anything else, we can bounce.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Trust
All
in
right.
Morey, trust the process.